got another report about the holy city of Oxum massacre, where they slaughtering folks inside of the church. As a matter of fact, I want to recognize the folks that just celebrated Mescal. You know what Mescal is, Gerald? That's when they burned the cross. And I'm not talking about burning the cross like the Ku Klux Klan. There's a history of burning the cross, but it ain't like the Ku Klux Klan. The Tagaru community and those who are part of the Tawadu faith, I'm talking about their own brand of worship, they burned the cross. But that goes back to the fact that if you remember Constantine was the first Roman emperor to accept Christianity and to stop feeding them folks to the lions in the Colosseum. And the reason that he accepted them is because anybody who would rather keep their faith and fight a lion and die fighting lions, you don't want to fight that person on the battlefield. So Constantine said, oh, no, I'm a Christian. We ain't got to fight them kind of folks. I'm a Christian, and this is what Christianity looks like. Well, the reason that they burned the cross, or the Mescal, a.k.a. cross, the reason they burned the cross is because Constantine's mom had a dream where she wanted to know where the cross of Jesus was at. And in the dream, she saw some smoke. And then she followed that in the dream. All of that is symbolic of the discovery of where the cross of Jesus was. And they found the cross, and part of that wood is dispersed in some of them, what you call Ethiopian churches. That's what that's all about. So for those of you who celebrated the Mescal, I want to just say, shout out to each and every one of you. For those of you who are in the diaspora and you're saying Ethiopian and you don't know if you Tagaru, you don't know if you Afar, you don't know if you Oromo. A long time ago to Oromo, all the Oromo I have ever met will never call themselves an Ethiopian. If you walked up to them and you say, you Ethiopian, they'd be like, I'm Oromo. Right now, if you walk up to somebody who's Tagaran or from Tigray and you say, you Ethiopian, they'd be like, I'm Tagaru. There's no self-respecting person from the Tigray that considers themselves an Ethiopian right now. But again, they've left the building, but there's no such thing as Ethiopia without the Tagaru people. So they got to figure that out. They got to figure it out. And that's why you're seeing Ethiopia unraveling. It's coming apart because there's no way you can reconcile raping my mother, raping my daughter, destroying my land, destroying my property, allowing a foreign government to come in and take my spoons and plates. Because they're from a place called Eritrea, and you got folks talking about, I'm from Eritrea, but they'll never go there. They don't want to be there. Folks escaping Eritrea. It's a dictatorship, never had an election, and calls itself a democracy. Now you got Abiy Ahmed, who lived up the street from me. Our kids went to the same school, talking about he's a democratic leader. That's a dictator. And he's partnering with the dictator, and the world's letting them commit genocide on the people because the people don't care about the people. The people in power don't care about the people. The Amhara elite don't care about the people. Those militias don't care about people. The military don't care. I don't even know how Ethiopia has a military without all the different people inside of the federal troops. They got folks from other jurisdictions, local military coming in across the street. That's like Aurora coming over here fighting you. And so, when folks start talking to you about the TPLF or the TDF or anybody, first of all, if you got a problem with the TPLF and you got a democracy, they ain't in power no more. So you need to focus on who's in power right now. That's like me talking about George Washington. I'm so mad at Thomas Jefferson. Man, you got a president right now. His name is Biden. You got a change in administration. So if you got a change in administration, it was based on democracy. What you should be upset about is this. If you thought that you were going to get support as an Oromo, and the moment that you got an Oromo that gets elected based on his support from his own people, and the first thing he does is go and bombs Oromo people, then you should probably be upset about that. If you got a prime minister that's partnering with a dictator that's in your country waging war on your people and your citizens and your neighbors, you should be upset about that. If you're dealing with genocide right now, 331 days, you should be upset about that. But if you got somebody that's, well, the TPLF, it's the TDF. They done upgraded. It's the Tigray Defense Force. TPLF is a political party. Now all of a sudden, because you disband political parties and you want to be a one-party state like Eritrea, so you make everybody else illegal, and then you murder activists and artists and lawyers of the Oromo community, and all of a sudden you're going to have an election. You notice nobody talks about that election. You can't even come out and say I won because everybody's like, nah, How you going to have an election when ain't nobody, you make all the other political parties illegal, you lock up the competition, you murder folks, and then you say it's election time. Ain't nobody, listen, Abiy Ahmed, ain't nobody trying to hear about your election except the elite who benefit from terrorism. And everybody realizes that there ain't no election. The TPLF is a political party. But guess what? The EPRDF, which took over after the Derg, was a collection of all of these different parties that helped fight and organize to get rid of what? Straight up communism. And then you have the individual, the Eritrea exercised their right to walk away from the country democratically, just like in their constitution right now. Every one of those participating coalition members can voluntarily walk away from that agreement, and many of them are. But you got someone like Abiy Ahmed is probably saying, like Pharaoh, you ain't leaving, you can't go, you can't go. Oh, but he about to get buried in that Red Sea. See, some of y'all worshiping the book, but you don't know that you're living the book. If Moses crossed the Red Sea out of Egypt, that means he came out of Africa, and then if he crossed over the Red Sea, he was still in Africa, because some of y'all don't even realize that Spain is Africa just as much as what you call the Middle East. And Saudi and all the rest of that is Africa. If you don't believe it, look at the documentation that king, the king left on the stones, written in Ge'ez, written in Greek, written in all those different languages, saying, I beat the brakes off of all of y'all. It's King Azana. I beat the brakes out of all of y'all, all the way from here, as far as I can see, across the Red Sea, all the way up there into India and Persia somewhere. I done beat the brakes off of all of y'all. Now all of a sudden you got folks, black folks, talking about all this came from somewhere else. We're great because Syrians came. We're great because Armenians came. We're great because them folks, whoever them folks are, ain't nothing came into Africa. Africa exported everything out of Africa. And the minute you realize that, then you will have one voice that you can speak to and from. Stop the genocide in Tigray. You got folks saying, well, you know, Nipsey Hussle was from Eritrea. Nipsey Hussle wasn't from Eritrea. His dad was from Eritrea, and he might have visited once, but I'm telling you, you got folks out here in the diaspora. A lot of your children is G's, B's, C's, triple OGs, and you don't even know it. Banging, straight bang. They over here banging just like they over there banging. Black folks know how to bang, and if you don't believe me, they banging around the corner from me right now. Yep. Nipsey Hussle is straight up Crip. He went, I'm Eritrean. Nah, them was Crips. And you raising kids that you are not teaching them their history. You're not teaching them to appreciate who they are. And they over here banging, and they disrespecting you in your own house, and you're like, that's not what we do as Ethiopians. Well, you should probably tell them a little bit more about Ethiopia and the pride about who they are, because they're more than Ethiopians. They're the origin of civilization. They're the architects of humanity. And when you build that, then you will stop destroying humanity. See, over here in North America, we already know how to deal with that. You don't recognize that your kids is over here being raised and they popping mollies. They out here banging. They trying to be, they sagging. They bout it. And you from somewhere else, so you don't know it. You don't even know what you looking at. Right. Your kids coming in, they all twisted up, and you talking about we from Ethiopia. It's like, no, I ain't. I'm rolling 30.
That's right.
I'm rolling 30. I'm from the set. And they popping Molly. These kids killing each other. They dying of overdoses. That's what happens when you get over here so far away and you become prodigal and you start not only, feeding the swine. They don't even feed it. They eat it. They don't just feed it. They eat it. So with that being said, stop the genocide in Tigray. Stop the genocide in Tigray. The TDF is at the doors of Finfini. And you know what happens when the Tagaru and the Oromo unite? Isn't that how the Battle of Adwa happened? When you start having all these folks uniting against one common denominator, and the common denominator is oppression. See, there was a time, and I don't know how it is now, but you didn't want no parts of them Oromo, and you don't want no parts of them Tagaru. The Oromo was the best. They was on them horses getting it. Getting it. What you call Ethiopia was always dominated by the North. In the South, the Oromo was handling their business. It wasn't until empire started coming down and collecting and all of those different things where you have what they call the King of Kings. Nagas Nagest, or whatever, however you want to call it. The King of Kings. They wasn't talking about the King of Kings of Europe. They wasn't talking about the King of Kings of France. They wasn't talking about the King of Britain. They talking about the King of what you talking about, black folks. And so shout out to the TDF, shout out to the Oromo community, shout out to I understand the Afar, everybody, the Somali, everybody that's tired of oppression. And I'm telling you, Abiy Ahmed, who lived up the street from me and our kids went to the same school, he ain't built for this. He tried to get somebody. He looks up to Isaias Afwerki. Your leader in Ethiopia, where y'all talking about prosperity party, and you dismantled the EPRDF or whatever you want to say, and you dismantled that because now all of a sudden you making all these changes and you ain't even never been elected. And then when you are elected, there ain't nobody to go over and to show up for the polls. They in jail. They at war. That's the same thing that you all give credit to Thomas Jefferson for so-called freeing the slaves. He ain't free no slaves. He made that Emancipation Proclamation in the time of war. Or Lincoln. Oh, Lincoln. Abe. Honest Abe. Honest Abe. Honest Abraham Lincoln, they signed that during the time of war. Don't nobody listen to what you decreeing when we at war. And he only freed the ones that succeeded from the Union. Just study the history. Just study the history. And so with that being said, Tigray Tisser. We'll speak because you have a government that won't let you speak. And they call it democracy. And they call it democracy. You got a government that is violating human rights. And some of y'all think that that's something to be proud of. You got a government where I told you Ethiopia, as you know it, is a very Christian country as it relates to its power. But there are a lot of other faiths there. There are traditional faiths. There are Muslims that are there. Everything that is there. But listen to this, Gerald. You got a prime minister who has the head of the Christian church locked up. How are you going to tell me that you believe in some sort of faith and you got the Abun or the Abuna, however you say it, you got the Abuna on house arrest? That's the same thing that Tedros did. He locked up there was a time where, and I'm using Ethiopia interchangeably, but that time is Abyssinia or whatever. They used to get their head clergy came out of Egypt. They were part of the Coptic tradition, and they got their spiritual leadership had to come out of Egypt. Haile Selassie changed that, but prior to that, he would come out of Egypt. And then locally, they had what's called the Abun, or the Abuna, right? The people, I would spell it Abune. The people of Ethiopia, or the Abyssinians, however you want to call it in a time period, they never respected the person from Egypt because half the time Ethiopia was at war with Egypt. Now you're going to tell me that the leader of my faith is from the same country that I'm always at war with. They respected the Abun because that was the local leadership. And so Tedros, guess what he does? He locks them both up. The cat comes from Egypt to visit. Tedros locks them both up. Locks them both up. Now, in 2021, Gerald, Abiy Ahmed has the head. Abiy Ahmed has the head of the Christian church locked up. He has the head of the Christian church locked up. And all of you folks is running around here talking about how you celebrating the mezcal. You just had New Year's celebration. You fast and you got fasting food on your menus every single day. Like, Gerald, if you go to what's known as Ethiopia, they got menus. On certain days, there's fasting menus. Because very, very religious, very, very devout. I'm talking about the average, ordinary person. Very beautiful people. I'm not talking about the leadership that always betrays and takes advantage of people who believe, but they don't believe. Right. You got a whole bunch of folks that say they blessing you, but they ain't blessing you. This is what Tedros saw. He was like, well, there was a time where it was so corrupt. It probably, all over the world. So people been playing this religion thing for a long time. And they wouldn't tax the clergy. The clergy sitting up there rich. This was in Africa, this is in Asia, this is in Europe, this is everywhere. So everybody don't get all twisted up about this. The clergy always been taxing and getting rich and owning land at the expense of the people. And so you got the farmers that's just getting the teft together. They just getting the teft and they just trying to have a coffee ceremony and they just want to have a little bit to eat. But the rulers is always running by and taking their stuff or burning their stuff or sleeping in their houses. And, the way the armies used to work, Gerald, is as the armies would move, every land they go through, wherever they stopped, the people had to feed them. Now you got an army of 100,000 folks coming through your town. You can imagine when they go to the next town, ain't nothing left in that town. It's all gone. It's all gone. So you had these clergy in partnership with the government, and they taxing the people and they generating all this great wealth. And then Tedros saw himself as a great reformer and a great Christian, and he would fight the Muslims. And if you either had to convert or be killed or get out the land and all these different things. He locks them all up. He don't have a relationship with the clergy because he think they playing games. Not mentioning you got the European Christians that's coming in, bringing in a new kind of Christianity. See, the Ethiopians, they got their own kind. But you always got these Christian missionaries coming in, teaching them Christianity. Yes. They like, man, we got Christianity. Nah, I got to teach you Christianity. What they doing is they come in here to get your resources. Today in 2021, Abiy Ahmed got the head of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, Tawahedo. Got him locked up. White guy had to sneak out the message. Had to sneak out the message. He was like, man, I'm not being silent. This dude got me locked up. The white guy had to sneak out his phone and tape the patriarch of the Ethiopian church and say, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this, but I'm like on house arrest. You got a lot of folks in Ethiopia that want to talk about this, but if they do, they're gonna be targeted. But if you willing to lock up the man of God, and y'all up here talking about one Ethiopia, you can't tell me that don't make sense. It don't make sense. It's heavy. So that being said, if you want to ask a question, ask where the Aboon is. Mathis. His name is Aboon Mathis. Ask where he's at. Ask why he's quiet. Ask why the Aboon, like when you celebrating the Mescal, if you over there in Ethiopia right now and you celebrating Mescal over there and your prime minister is Abiy Ahmed, ask did the Aboon show up? No, because Abiy Ahmed is in partnership with the devil, Isaias Afwerki, and locks the man of God up, and you're in a faith community where where a genocide's taking place. Where a genocide's taking place. Man. All right, you all, share this. Somebody needs to know it. There's a lot of information out there. Someone might say, leave us alone. There is no us. The only us is whether you believe in genocide or you don't. If the us is you believe that raping women and children and putting foreign objects inside of their genital areas, if you believe castration, if you believe washing up of bodies on shores, you know what I mean? Because you done murdered folks and threw them over cliffs and now these bodies are washing up on shores. You know what I mean? If you believe shooting at folks and robbing folks as they flee for sanctuary, you know what I mean, as refugees, if you believe destroying places where folks go and receive medical care and attention, all this stuff is documented. They're so cold, they even killing Doctors Without Borders. You got folks that are there to serve as Doctors Without Borders getting killed. And so if that's the us you're talking about, I'm more than happy to leave us alone. Because I don't want to be nowhere around you. I don't want to have nothing to do with you. And if you think that Ethiopia is anything without the Tigray people, if you think it's going to be anything without the Oromo people, as a matter of fact, the Oromo people have the largest number inside of that particular country. And the leader right now is an Oromo who bombs his own people. If you think that's a formula for success, good luck. Maybe I will leave you with maybe I'll leave you with a story. Everybody pick up this Amnesty International report, just download it. I didn't know if they realized I was a person. Rape and other sexual violence in the conflict in Tigray, Ethiopia. Sexual violence against girls and women in Tigray. This is the chapter 4. Sexual violence, along with other grave human rights violations, has been a defining element of the conflict in Ethiopia's Tigray region since its outbreak in November 2020. Multiple forms of sexual violence, including rape, gang rape, sexual slavery, sexual mutilation, and torture, have been perpetrated against Tigrayan women and girls by Ethiopian government forces, the ENDF and ASF and their allied Fano militias, as well as by Eritrean forces that have been fighting alongside the Ethiopian military. The sexual violence perpetrated against women and girls in different areas of Tigray throughout the 9-month conflict is shocking in its scale and level of brutality. It is often accompanied by threats of additional acts of physical and psychological torture aimed at causing fear and physical and psychological damage. I could go on and on and on, But if this is what war looks like, it's a war on the bodies of women. And because you can't fight the TDF and you can't win militarily, as Abiy Ahmed said in one report, and I will pull it out if you don't believe me, you all need to surrender or you're going to keep seeing these atrocities happening to your people. Well, we are going on almost a year now. On November 4th, it will be 1 year of a genocide taking place in Tigray. We've been talking about this. Indele KETO FM has been talking about this. Tigray Media House has been talking about this. Cyber Power of Tigray has been talking about this. Omni Tigray and so many, many, many others. We just need other folks to continue to listen and to continue to share. And for those of you who are somehow ashamed of your ethnic identity and believe that the more Amharic you can speak in the better, in the best way, that's like saying the King's English. You're good enough with what you have. And you have a prime minister right now who does not respect human rights. He's in partnership with others who don't respect human rights. And I want you to read the Amnesty International report, not only on the sexual violence against girls and women. Read the one about the holy city of Aksum, where folks are showing up to worship and being mutilated, murdered, and thrown over cliffs. Gang rape, including of a pregnant woman. A 32-year-old woman raped by multiple perpetrators while in detention for 2 months at a police station in Humera, Western Tigray. I mean, it's just too much to read. Yes. A majority of rape survivors, 38 of 63 interviewed by Amnesty International, said that they were raped by multiple perpetrators. Some were pregnant when they were raped, and others were assaulted in front of their children. Stop the genocide in Tigray. Tigray Tisser. We will keep speaking, and we'll be a voice for the voiceless. Share this with someone you know. What's known as Ethiopia is unraveling. It's a country based on an agreement, and an agreement is not standing. There are over 100 million folks, 80 different ethnicities. If you study language, you've got the Semitic languages. They're known as the Proto-Afro-Asiatic languages. Those include Ge'ez, the Tigarian, it's Hebrew, it's all of those. But then you've got a whole other family of languages. You've got a whole other family of languages. You know, it's the Saharan language branch. All of these are original languages, and they're not one. And if you try and merge them into one and saying that's what Ethiopia is, that's why you constantly have this bubbling over and this fighting. Ethiopia is an empire, and some folks know that they've been conquered. And some of those who have been conquered will continue to fight back and become conquerors. It's a constant history of war and struggle. And so it's been 331 days of genocide, and now you know. The genocide in Rwanda was 100 days. We're at 331 days. If you don't see the urgency in terms of these politicians and these world governments that are saying, well, what did you see? What are you? They're focused on that damn dam, the Renaissance Dam. And I guarantee you, that dam, if completed, would make the majority of Ethiopia independent in terms of its access to generating its own power. And colonization and imperialism always fights against other people having control of their own resources. They will deny it, and they will break it down, and they will always They send you struggling and scurrying as a beggar. Stop the genocide in Tigray. Shout out to the Tigray Defense Forces for fighting for your people. And any people who won't fight for themselves and fight for their loved ones and fight for their parents and fight for their property are probably not people worth being around anyway.